Good morning, folks. For this one, I'm not going to do live stream comments, so please bear with me. I just want to give a little bit of an update on the channel. So Jason and I are going to be taking a break from making content together for a bit. And so I'm sorry about that. You're going to have to sort of deal with my boring delivery and not have as much chatty, fun banter, which is something that Jason always contributes to our conversations. And I want to acknowledge his talents in the videography and the editing and facilitation, as well as his good heart. I know that his intentions are honorable, and I encourage people to, if you haven't already, go subscribe to his channel on YouTube, which is Argus Fest, ARGUS. So sort of this decision, it's not, I don't take this sort of lightly, and I'm still in the process of just trying to figure out, again, what am I doing here and what is the purpose of the research that I'm doing and the path that I'm on. You know, this continues to be an ongoing conversation. Ultimately, this was sort of precipitated by Jason making me aware that RFK Jr. was, I think, actually the closing presentation on the EthDenver this year. And so I ended up recording the whole thing. Maybe I'll upload it to my channel. I was going to go through and edit it, but it was very long-winded, and he was correct in that there was very little new information in it. What I'm asking people to do at this stage, it's kind of like with the Hoskinson clip, is read between the lines, like operate more on a meta narrative level and consider how these story arcs are being shaped and to what end. So this whole, the RFK Jr., before he appeared live on stage, they had a clip from the new movie, which I guess is a musical, which is fascinating given the whole entrainment in harmony and frequency and his adoption of digital currency systems. And, it was in Philadelphia, which again, very strong imprinting in front of the Constitution Center. And of course, everyone is demanding their independence, and no one is going to acknowledge that ultimately the Constitution is going to be replaced by smart contracts, and all of your freedom from the Fed and the deep state is going to embed you with digital tokens in the global ant computer, right? As part of the global intelligence, right? You won't have to deal with the deep state anymore or the Fed. You'll just be part of an agent-based simulation modeling and part of some tissue, that is, the metro Philadelphia area, or wherever you're located. So it's just so very clear how this is all being laid out. And it's just over the top and ridiculous. So he was joined in conversation. It was about a half an hour conversation with this woman who is a businesswoman in crypto from Wyoming. And I will point out that I've been recently doing investigations into the Emerald Gate Foundation, which is working on subtle energies. And all of those executives are based in Wyoming as well. Now, the CEO of the Emerald Gate Foundation was the former head of research and development for SAP software. So very significant there. So, and of course, Wyoming, Hoskinson has been based there as well, one of his innovation centers for Cardano. Wyoming has definitely been on the forefront. And there was just really nothing new to be said there, but it clearly lays out the crypto narrative with RFK Jr. And, it's interesting if you think about the fact that he's pushing San Patrignano and these rehab centers based on a model of a man who identified as a medium and a psychic faith healer, that the idea of digital tokens as perhaps an interdimensional pictographic communication sort of hits home. And I don't think there's really any chance that he's going to be, the president of the United States, but I think he's being put in a position probably to make a strong case for these mental health and addiction treatment centers. And I could totally see him, if not running those, because I don't think he's capable of actually running anything, but being the face of such a program. I think that is far more likely. So during the conversation, he was actively heckled by a lot of the audience members. And of course, we know that the EthDenver crowd is very liberal. Now, I will point out, RFK Jr., he doesn't really understand what the token engineering is. He still thinks, I don't know if he still thinks it's about money, but that's mostly what he talks about, is the money side of things, and maybe a little bit the media and privacy. Those are sort of the big things, and keeping things from being taxed, right? Keeping things away from the government. But really, EthDenver is a lot more about the token engineering and the impact finance than it is. This is not the same crowd per se as Bitcoin Miami. Those are definitely people who want to get rich quick, and the EthDenver is much more in terms of the impact finance space. So the heckling was going on, and Jason said that it was about Gaza and Kennedy's position on Israel. And so this is where things went a little bit sideways. So if you listen to me, you'll know, I understand that bad things happen. Those are bad things. And in fact, there are many bad things that happen in the world, right? Have been war, death, targeted genocide, indigenous genocide, dirty wars, killing activists over, dams in South America, the Vietnam War, Southeast Asia, Africa. I mean, there's many, Syria, many bad things. Yemen, Saudi Arabia and Yemen, so many, right? And they're all terrible. I'm not giving a pass on any of that. But at the same time, I haven't yet seen how we can take public action to have an impact on policy, because I think at the top, we understand that the movement is towards this Web3 global governance superorganism. And so, marching, going to protests, watching documentaries, these things, it's not actually changing the harm being done. And if anything, if we understand this as open source signals intelligence, when you drop a polarizing issue like Gaza, Israel into the conversation, what it does is it creates these really intense frequencies that are very easy to model and modulate. And so that's what I saw in this room. There wasn't anything happening in EthDenver besides maybe impact finance that was going to actually change the outcome of this long-standing issue, geopolitical issue. But it's important to understand the role of social impact finance in all of this, and that it's problem, reaction, solution, right? Which doesn't mean that the problem is somehow not harmful. It certainly is harmful, but it's for a purpose. It is strategic. And so actually, while we were on our Arkansas trip, I can't remember if maybe Steffers or someone had sent me a text with some information and about impact investing in Gaza. And we know that this is really would be the ultimate build back better, right? You level something and you build it back better. You traumatize people and then you make money off of their trauma. You build new workforces for Silicon Valley. And clearly, Silicon Valley has had its interest in Gaza for the past 10 years, more or less, working on developing coding boot camps for the Palestinians. And this was really important information because, again, a lot of the research I had done on impact finance is connected to Ronald Cohen, who was born in Egypt, and then his family left Egypt for England. But they are Jewish, and his former father-in-law, I think by his third wife, was Yoshi Harel, who is now deceased, but he was the captain of the Exodus. So Ronald Cohen and the Portland Trust and social finance, he was a major driver in the technological rise of Israel. And now the technological rise in Israel is going to be transferred into using these technologies to generate data for social impact. And this was something that was briefly touched. I've talked about this quite a bit. I've done talks with Shai Danan about this very long, and I did it 3 years ago, right? And in the meantime, again, I've moved on from the impact finance and the data to the digital twinning, to the cybernetics, and now into the superposition multiverse, right? With token engineering. I've kept going, but it doesn't mean the stuff I did 3 years ago isn't important or doesn't matter. But the reality is very few people ever pick that up, right? It's like, if I'm not talking about it and hitting the drum all the time that this is important and pay attention and pay attention and pay attention, it's just gone with the wind in the ether, like literally in the ether, because everyone's consciousness is being jerked around, and people are not thinking. And it's very, like, as I reflect on, again, what am I doing in this next phase? I have to consider, just as people who were very upset about the conflict in Palestine and the devastation of Palestine, did my actions really make a difference? Or did they simply provide a signal to steer the system? And I don't know. I don't know that. I'm still trying to figure that out. But at the time, I was sharing this information about Silicon Valley's interest in Gaza and developing coding boot camps, and how this interfaced with my previous research with social finance in Israel, and the fact that they were doing social impact bonds in Israel because they have socialized medicine. So it's very easy to get all of that data for the AI systems, as well as education. And this links to the EdTech rollout in Israel itself. So when I first started looking at it, it was clear that it wasn't just targeting Palestinians. It was actually targeting Israelis, because ultimately the kibbutz model is the model of the superorganism, right? The socialized systems are going to be the model of the digital economy. And, there was a brief recent mention. Seb Solomon did a piece for Unlimited Hangout. And she did mention impact finance. She did mention blockchain, and Silicon Valley. But the headline was technocracy, right? And I know that the people who write the content often are not in charge of the headlines, but that framing is limiting, right? Ronald Cohen was not mentioned. And for all of the issues that, the limitations that Raul had, he was the first person with any platform when he was still at Mint Press who did a full research investigation of Ronald Cohen and social finance in Israel. And, perhaps that was just the system's way of knowing that you can get Allison on the hook by paying attention to impact finance and actually shining a light on a Ronald Cohen. I would say the other person was Sandy Adams very early on in one of those protests. And she was in London calling out Ronald Cohen. But it hasn't picked up. If anything, it's just shrunk. Right. And so at the time in October, I was sharing this information with Jason, passing it through and saying, this is an issue you really care about. This was an issue that he was centered on in the documentary space and his activism space and personal relationships for quite a number of years. And I said, when we get back, this is an important conversation to have. This was before Seb Solomon had done her piece. I said, we need to lay this out because this is the piece that's not being talked about. Right. And ultimately it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And sort of the last time that we had tension, it was around similar things. I was asking him to lay out what was happening with impact finance in Colorado and in Denver specifically and in housing specifically. And it didn't happen. Right. And it is what it is, right? Everybody, and you can't make someone care. You can't make someone want to step into that space. But it's hard for me. I'm tired, right? I'm tired. And then I wonder why bother, right? I put the title here. It's not my boulder. It's not my boulder to keep pushing up the damn hill, social impact finance. But you can't have the superposition multiverse. You can't have the token engineering. You can't have the cybernetics. You can't have the program nudges and the smart contracts that are replacing the Constitution for your independence under the dome without understanding this core element. This is the engine that's going to drive it. So I've moved on to talk about other things, but it doesn't mean that social impact finance isn't important. It doesn't mean that Ronald Cohen isn't important. Seb Solomon, she mentioned the 8200 unit, the impact unit. That's important. We need more voices. And so as much as I value Jason's editing skills and what he brings to the conversations in terms of collegiality or the levity, which is important because, that's not my wheelhouse. I need more, right? I can't be the content creator. I just can't. I can't keep all the plates in the air at once. And so if you're watching this, what I'm asking is that, what are you guys doing to keep to help keep these plates in the air, right? How are you explaining it? Or are you just pivoting back into whatever like emotionally triggering superficial stuff that people are talking about? Are you doing the homework, right? I mean, I put an albeit like a quirky poem up yesterday, last night or early this morning about a trip that I made out to Montauk, and it's sort of based in a very bizarre exchange that I had inside the Big Duck on Long Island, right? And it's complicated. It's about complexity, and it's about cellular automata, and it's about lattice crystals, and it's about waveforms and emergence. It's about all those things. But I need for people to be prepared to do or not. Like ultimately, it's your choice to do that homework or not do that homework. As David Noble said, he never gave grades to any of his students because he said that the people who did the work got the education. And so I'm educating myself. I have this vast independent study project, right? And people come in and out of the independent study project, and far be it from me to twist anyone's arm in it. But if we are building a circle of people who are doing this work, you can't continually defer to one person to be the face, to keep the plates in the air. It's not right. It's not right. And even if you don't do it perfectly, I didn't do it perfectly. I never anticipated making videos. I just had my little blog off to the side, right? You get better with practice. You learn, you develop. But you don't have to, right? And so when I was in my preservation program, we had a preservation law class, and I can't remember the teacher's name, but he was quite a character. Tall, slender man. He had hair that was slicked back and suit, and it was Socratic seminar, right? And it was law. Law is not now we know law is not. Now we're going to just have smart contract law, but law was not my strong suit. And you would have to do the reading, and not only read it, but think about it and be prepared to talk, right? Be prepared to lay out your understanding, talk with other people, justify your positions in public with a very intimidating figure. Now, that's not what social media is. Social media is simply click, scroll, hide behind information, let it wash over you. You don't have to have an opinion, hold 50 different conflicting things of interest at once. It doesn't ask you to be engaged. It just asks you to give your eyeballs to it. It asks you to give your heart to it. It doesn't actually ask much more than that. And so we're buffeted around. And in that buffeting, like that's the energy, that's the spin vortex that is all of this. That is how you set up a room full of, liberal token engineers and put up the guy promoting like the truck freedom convoy and crypto and Bitcoin, and you have the heckling about Gaza. It's all a show. And it's not even a good show. So I'm not here to say that thing is okay, but it's been going on for a very long time, and it will continue to go on. And unless, and you can hold two things at once. You can hold that, and you can talk about impact finance in Israel and how it relates to Gaza and the role of Silicon Valley in that, and where Ronald Cohen fits in with Michael Bloomberg. And you can build off this tiny little base of foundation, that one article that Raul wrote, the chunk that Leo has written, which is really important. And I will say it actually has come to my attention that Silicon Icarus, there's an archive still back up. And I meant to actually also replicate Leo's work over on my blog. And then this one with Seb's, but there's more. We need more voices. I've had people tell me in the past, well, you're the only one talking about it, right? You're the only one talking about it, so how can I take it seriously? Because it doesn't seem important. It's not in my feed. And so if the people who are your closest collaborators, when you ask and you say, listen, whatever happened back in October with that information, with these important conversations that needed to be had that didn't happen? And I get it. Life happens. My life happens. I finally finished a quilt, that I started 6 months ago. Life happens. But then you acknowledge that and you say, wow, time got away from me. But actually, that is important. I'm going to do that work. that's going to be my next priority. Or I have XYZ things in the near future, and then it's going to be my priority. You don't simply continue to push back and let me roll the boulder, because it's not my boulder. I've delegated the boulder. And if you don't choose to pick up the boulder, yeah, you can choose to not pick up the boulder. But that means that at this point, for now, our paths are separate, right? Because I need more. I need more. And I need not just from Jason, but I need more from the audience that's consuming this information. I had some people get their nose all out of joint because now I'm going to have to redo this conversation Jason and I had, because it's important. It was with Charles Hoskinson and Michaela Uluru. And it was, again, one of these meta-analyses of how they're shaping the narrative. Oh, we're supposed to believe Charles Hoskinson, the flag waver, is Mr. Freedom Patriot who's going to protect you, right? And he's really worried about World Economic Forum, and he's really worried about bioweapons. And people literally at this point still don't know to pull up the rug and look and go, oh, that doesn't smell right. That smells a little fishy. That's not okay. That's where they're steering us. Look ahead. Look a few steps ahead. I mean, they're probably already 20 steps ahead, but for God's sake, you could at least look 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. It's not that hard. And I said, this is with his, the clip from him talking about the World Economic Forum. This is a screening test. If you put up a dumb comment on here, I'm removing you off the channel. Because I've been talking about archetypes lately. I'm your archetype. I'm the archetype of the hard-ass coach, or the, teacher who cares enough to whip you into shape. And sure, you can skip class. You can drop the course. You can go somewhere else. And we're not getting the education, right? You can play hooky. You can go back behind the building and smoke some cigarettes. You can't do that. We all get to choose. But in my corner of the internet, we're doing serious work. And we're taking it seriously. And this work is not just me going blah, 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 blah at you. It's you picking it up. So if you want to go on my poem that's about cellular automata and crystal lattices and complexity, and be like, oh, that picture there, that's a Saturn cube. That's a bad place. And that's where it stops for you. I don't know why you're over here, honestly. I don't know why you're here. And I don't know why I'm here, honestly. I still don't know. So, Jason is a very smart man. He's a talented man. He has his own channel. And at some point, if he's able to do this work, make some content, lay it out, I'd love that. And we can see about reconnecting and collaborating again on other projects. But for the time being, I'm just going to steer my own boat, because that's the thing that I can do. And it's what I feel called to do at the moment, but it does this whole enterprise of talking to people who are stuck in scripts. Literally, the whole CIA Wurlitzer thing, that's what social media is. Oop, I can hit the Gaza button. Boop. And then it's like zombie time. I can only talk one thing. And I don't feel responsible to expand the conversation. I don't feel responsible to you as a friend to do this work, to participate actively beyond, and it's not a small thing. The editing is not a small thing. I appreciate that. I acknowledge that. I acknowledge the humor, the levity that's added, because that's not my skill set. But at this point, I need more voices, because when the people come around and say, well, you're the only one who's talking about this, it must not be that important. And I will say, aside, Leo has done a lot of work, in that space. And Steffers did a lot of early work in the nanotech space. And I appreciate people who have made guest posts on the blog. And I do admit that I have a few that are in a holding pattern, that because my life has been so crazy, I haven't gotten around to that. But it doesn't have to be on my blog. It can be on your blog. It can be on your channel. We need a chorus. We need as Jason would say, to raise the bar. And if we're not able to raise the bar when friends ask, then maybe we need just to reevaluate the whole program. So I have a lot in maps that I've been working on. I still have my own Zoom channel. It won't be as high production quality as Jason has had. And I can only have, one person on at a time while we do that. But for the time being, I have a lot of stuff that I would like to share because I think it's really fascinating. And I do invite you to go to my blog, wrenchinthegears.com, and look at the poem about Montauk and the Big Duck. And I could use a spell on pushing the boulder. And I could use an understanding from people that there are scripts and that the scripts are part of the game. And it's frequency and entrainment. And we can see the scripts. It doesn't mean that we don't have to care about the things we care about. We should still care because that makes us human. But if we stay in the script and we're not willing to stretch, there's not really much a point in being here. So anyway, that is my update. I wish Jason all the best. I hope, he has talked about doing some work on the universal scene descriptor, or I still think there's a lot of material about what's happening with impact finance in Colorado. And I'm sure there will be things coming out of EthDenver, and it will be nice to have more people making content, presuming that happens. And I hope it does. And I hope you guys will consider doing your part as well, even if you don't have your own space online, that you will do it in person, because it's happening. Not to scare people. I'm not here to scare people, and I think the more clarity we have about it, the better we can navigate. So, go subscribe to Argus Fest. No hard feelings. And again, we shall see paths sometimes reunite. I would love to see what Jason has to say about Palestine and social finance and Silicon Valley, building off of the introduction that Seb Solomon did on Unlimited Hangout. But that went in a direction that really didn't interrogate that as deeply as, in my opinion, warranted. So there's more work to be done. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.